What are you doing?
Bro, I've collected a ton of scrap, and there's a guy that comes around here at the same time every day, and I'm afraid he's gonna take it.
What are you talking about? That's our neighbor.
Dude, get down! He'll see you! No matter what happens, you have to carry on without me. Tsunami, the voice of the bloopers, and I'm here bringing you my review of Mad Max. Now, Mad Max was not quite a disappointment, but it was a disappointment for me. I love Mad Max. Mad Max is one of my most favorite movie series ever, with Mel Gibson and all the craziness. The comic book's fantastic, and you got this crazy world. It's just really good story. However, this game did not necessarily portray what the world really was. Mad Max was way over the top, even in the 80s. But as far as the game goes, it wasn't over the top. There was a lot of things that you were like, whoa, that's in a game. But I was expecting a lot more. Something more along the lines of an open world like Just Cause. Huge fan of open world games because you can find so many different nuances that you can do inside of the game, and it's just fun for me. They didn't push the envelope. Graphically, I didn't feel the graphics were really as strong as they were in Shadows of Mordor and Batman, obviously. Batman, they've had plenty of time to get that together. It's more along the lines for me of Infamous 2, which is a great game also. But Mad Max is definitely behind, I feel like, in the graphics. It could have been cleaner, that's what I feel like. I don't think the graphics were cleaned up quite enough. The sound in the game was actually quite fantastic. I loved the explosions, even though sometimes the sound did cut out on you, it was really weird. I absolutely did love the sound, it was good. The explosions were good, they were loud, it put you in the environment. All the crazies had great sound. The voice acting was actually really good, it was solid. But rolling into the storyline, that's actually kind of how I felt. It ended like you would expect a Mad Max to end. However, it was kind of lackluster. There wasn't really much of a story. The game was more about its content than what it really was the story. The story you probably could finish in about, if you're really good, because the game is not easy. It is kind of a difficult game, but if you're really good, you can probably finish it in about 8 hours. Which doesn't hurt it because it's full of content. It's not a bad story, but it's kind of your average story, I think, that they put together. But we're gonna roll into content. Content's where I was really happy. Now, I'm a huge open world fan, so I like a lot of content. Content, even if it's repetitive, does not bug me. I am waiting for the day that you have an open world game and every single area of the map has new content. Content specific to just that area. Mad Max, obviously, Shadows of Mordor was, and so was Infamous. But I'm really waiting on the game where every area is different, so you're not just feel like you're in the same area with new characters when you unlock a new area. It's kind of But I do enjoy it for the challenge because it creates a challenge for me to get everything completed and do everything. And this game has a lot of content. I mean, I can't even name all the content. It's got different unlocks for the car. It's got different unlocks for Max. It's got different unlocks for Max's overall health and well-being. All kinds of content. The content for me really, that's what jumped the game. The game probably would have gotten a really low score from me if it didn't have hours worth of content. It took forever to beat this game. So overall, as a critic, I can't give this game a high rating because the story really knocked it down. It didn't really make you want to play the story. The content was fun. Unlocking all the car parts were great. That's really what you were playing for. And I know a lot of people don't play for that. So people like to have a combination of both. Overall, because of the graphics, it felt like they didn't put as much time into the story as they did into the game content. I'm gonna have to give this game a 7. Now that's critically. I also kind of feel that they didn't quite deliver on what they had promised 2 years ago, which is really disappointing because they had an extra 2 years on top of the year that they originally had to build this game. Personal for me, I'm giving this game an 8.5. And I'm giving it that because I had fun playing the game. I had a lot of fun playing the game. It was interesting in its content. There was a lot of things you could do. I drove my car off a cliff like 900 times just to see if I could land it upside down. And I couldn't. I don't know why the game wouldn't let you do that. There was just so much there and so much that you could explore and see and do and collect. So for me and my interest, it was an 8.5. It is definitely a game I would get. It is a fun game. It will keep you entertained if you like open world. If you prefer open world with a story, you're going to want to stay away from this one. If you prefer open world that has a little bit less content, this one's got a lot of content. So if you're looking for a little bit less content and a game you can complete a little bit quicker, you're going to want to stay away from this one. But if you want something with a lot of content that's going to keep you busy for a long time, you're definitely going to want to pick up this game. It is a lot of fun. Thank you guys. Don't forget to like and subscribe.
Hello, fellow gamers. This is your boy Zero Inc., and I'm coming with my portion of the Mad Max review. Now, Mad Max was created by Avalanche Studios in a published project by WB. Basically, Avalanche Studios was trying to shop original ideas for open world games, and they kept being turned down, and then WB came up with the idea that they wanted a Mad Max game, and that's exactly why Avalanche Studios worked on a Mad Max open world game. And Mad Max overall is a great story to actually do an open world game. It's one of those series that everybody loves, and the way he always tried to get it right, it never seemed to work out for him. There's just so many things about Mad Max that people love. So I was a little about them doing a game about it. Avalanche Studios is known for games like Just Cause, Hunter. They did little games that they published themselves. But when you get these big titles like this, Avalanche Studios does a great job, especially with games like Just Cause. So I knew it was going to be decent from that aspect of it. Mad Max overall is a game about Mad Max. He gets in a confrontation with one of the bosses of Gastown. And basically, he ends up losing his car, he ends up losing absolutely everything in this confrontation with the leader of Gastown. And he ends up being left to die. It's your job as the player to go through and rebuild a car, rebuilding different strongholds that he could stay in, end up rebuilding his cred, basically, in terms of the world, rebuilding everything that was lost in the confrontation. Mad Max trying to get through the Plains of Silence. That's his whole goal, is to get past all the sand and to get through the Plains of Silence and the big nothing. There's got to be more out there. So he needs a car to do that. So he ends up running into this character that you'll find really early named Chum Bucket, and Chum Bucket basically gives him the opportunity to remake his vehicle to get everything that he lost back. Overall, you meet a lot of interesting characters. You also meet a concubine, which I will not get into, and her daughter, which is probably one of the better story arcs within the game. You also meet several different territory bosses. Basically, it's your job to help all these bosses to do what you need to do to get back on your feet. Overall, the sound was really, really good. The voice acting was spot on. The sound for the car was awesome. When you rammed a car, the explosions were great. But then there were some problems. The weapons didn't have as much impact as your fists. But that was weird to me. You get storms periodically while you're going around in the world. You get storms that just occur out of nowhere. Some of the most inopportune times these storms will occur. The sound on that is way too loud. It goes from a decent, steady sound to the point where you have to turn down your TV screen with just the reverb and everything on it. For me, it just seems like the sound was just way too high, not balanced at all. The weapons were kind of weak, but combat for the fist, that was awesome. A lot of weight to the fist, a lot of weight to the car combat, a lot of different sound effects for different things you do, like the harpoon, all the different things you can do within the car. The shotgun sounds very, very satisfying. So it's very hard to grade this, but I'm going to give it an 8 out of 10 because there were some minor problems. Not anything that would immediately take you out of the experience. The rest of the sound sounded great, so an 8 out of 10 is perfect. Now that brings us to gameplay. What to say about the gameplay? The combat was satisfying, but there is problems with a lot of the gameplay, like driving. It's very hard to get your car to go, especially when you're stuck in the sand. You could hold down the trigger as hard as you can, and it'll just barely go, like boom, boom, boom. That's that's real to what sand would do, and it makes sense, but it also gets annoying. Sometimes you're wondering why you're stuck. Like, there's no sand around you and you're wondering why you're stuck. There's a special mechanic where you start to blur and you hear more wind when you're going to max speed in your car. You very rarely hit max speed. I don't know if that's because the PS4 controller, the trigger's worn out, but you very rarely hit max speed. It's a challenge. You get different challenges inside the game, which I'll explain in contents later, but when you can't tell whether you're hitting max speed with no meter that tells you whether you're hitting max speed, it becomes very, very difficult to actually hit max speed. The fighting, sometimes you'll pick an enemy up, or you'll drop an enemy on his head, or you'll do something just an automatic. So basically, you pick him up, and then you'd have some guy hit you while you pick him up. You have no choice, and you lose your combo meter. Countering works for the most part, but there are times where even if you get that button correct, you'll just turn around and you'll block rather than actually parry the attack. It's really weird. There's no real system that actually tells you what the difference is between a parry and just a regular block. So the gameplay in it is kind of eh. Bosses become really, really easy when you start using weapons because they can't block the weapons. But then again, the car combat is satisfying. Fighting is a satisfying thing, even though it has difficulty. Some glaring issues with the gameplay. I'm going to give gameplay a 7 out of 10. It was decent, it was passable, it doesn't take you out of the experience, but it isn't perfect. It isn't even above average. It's below Batman and Shadows of Mordor. The game was really fun. Overall, I had an enjoyable experience. It kept me entertained. I tried to get all the challenges and tried to get everything. I ended up platinuming the game, so I've been through the whole game now. It's probably the most fun I've had with a new IP and a new franchise than I have had in a while. It's actually really true to the Mad Max universe. It's really an interesting game overall. It was a lot of fun. It was a game I just had to keep playing till I got everything. I searched every location, got all the history relics. It makes you want to do all that, so I have to give fun factor in this a perfect 10 out of 10. It's a fun game. It's satisfying. While you are playing it, you are going to enjoy it. It can get a little slow when you go around to different areas, but I'm still going to give it a 10 out of 10 because overall, there's not really much I can say other than it was just fun to blow stuff up or blow a car up or ram cars with your car. It was just an overall fun experience. Content, wow. There's too much of it in a lot of areas. You can upgrade Mad Max. You can upgrade every stronghold you have. You can upgrade your car. You can upgrade Max's abilities. There's 4 areas you can upgrade in terms of strongholds. And there's just a mess of stuff. There's different scavenging locations, death runs, ton of content. And now when I say there's too much content, basically after I'd say the middle of the 3rd area, the 3rd stronghold that you do, which is Pink Eye, there's no need for scrap anymore because you would have already upgraded everything you need to upgrade besides the strongholds. So you end up running out of reasons to get scrap or reasons to go and get those scavenging locations except for history relics because you're not going to need the scrap eventually. And there's one more area after Pink Eye. So you end up in the middle of the game running out of stuff to upgrade by going to the different scavenging locations and getting all the scrap from everywhere. They have challenges, in-game challenges, not the trophies. They have trophies on top of that. They have all these different things to do, which I do have to say Avalanche Studios kind of messed up on because once you clear out an area, enemies don't respawn. So get the challenges done before you reduce threat to 0 in all locations. I'm giving that as a free tip to anybody who plays Mad Max, which I think is kind of a blow because if you're going to make a challenge that you have to complete to get the trophy or to get certain things you need in the game, you want to have that respawn so that you can do it after you're done with the storyline. I just think it was a missed opportunity. They really need to patch in a respawn mechanic for all areas, I think. But overall, there's just a mess of content with the storyline and all the side missions and the death runs and the scavenging locations and the stopping mines. You're supposed to dismantle minefields. So I'm going to give content another 10 out of 10. More than enough content here if you really want to go through everything, which is really, really rare these days in open world games. And that brings us to storyline. Now, storyline is more of a narrative again. I don't know why we're getting so many narrative-based games. Now, when I say say narrative based, basically a storyline to me. You have backstory, you have different cutscenes that play out based on stuff that happened in the past, flashbacks, you have all this different stuff. That's more of a storyline to me. Whereas in a narrative kind of keeps you going through the game, the present time, whereas in a storyline deals with past, present, and future. In this, it's more here and now, just to get you through the game. Now, in terms of the overall narrative, though, it's actually good. It's actually an above-average narrative. You end up enjoying a lot of the characters. Chumbucket, you have the concubine and her daughter. Storyline overall, I have never wanted to kill a bad guy so much as I did in this particular game due to what he did within the storyline. I haven't had this much desire to go after the bad guy because there's something that happens, and it's true to the Mad Max universe, because every time Mad Max tried to get it right, he just couldn't get it right. Every time he tried to start over, something would go wrong and mess it up. It's true here in this Mad Max also. The ending is satisfying, though I do feel the ending, there's a certain part in the ending that doesn't make any sense to me. Yes, it's Mad Max, and yes, everybody usually has trouble in Mad Max, but there's something that he does that doesn't make any sense to me. There's something that happens to a certain character that doesn't make sense at the very end. To me, it's frustrating that they put that in there because there was really no cause for this particular character to go through what he did. But you know what? Creative choice, they have the right to write in however they want it to end. But I just felt it was a little shoved in there. I felt that the ending could have been a little bit different. But it's true to the Mad Max universe. I realize if you're trying to stay true to Mad Max, which Avalanche Studio did beautifully, but it just seems like it doesn't fit what happens there at the end. I just don't want to spoil it for you guys. But overall, I'm going to give the storyline an 8 out of 10. It's an above average storyline. It's an above average narrative, actually. It keeps you going through the whole thing. It makes you want to progress to see what happens next. It makes you want to progress to get at the enemies that go after Mad Max and actually screw up his situation again. Graphics. This one's a hard one to grade because the game looks great for what it is. It's very unique, and it's actually one of the few desert games that I actually enjoyed in terms of scenery. The scenery was really, really good. The enemies, though, were kind of repetitive, and a lot of the character models were kind of eh. The cutscenes were great. Mad Max himself looked great. You have blood on Max's shirt that never goes away. You have certain things that happen to Max that never go away. They're just there. It seems like more of an oversight. So for me, I want to say that the graphics are comparable to Dragon Age. I do believe Dragon Age was better in terms of the lighting and in terms of the environments and stuff. But overall, it does what it's supposed to do. It's average, it's good, it's decent, it does what it's supposed to do. But for an open world, the graphics are actually decent. So I'm going to give the graphics in this a 7 out of 10. They work, they're average, they don't take you out of the experience. There's a lot of beautiful things to see if you stop and look in certain areas. But overall, the graphics were average and they were okay. And lastly, that brings us to length. Now the length is hard also to grade because if you do everything, the game is going to take you forever. I'm talking 40 to 60 hours worth of gameplay to do everything. Even more closer to 60 hours to do everything. Now if you do just the storyline, you can finish it in about 8 hours if you rush through. For an open world game, that's pretty standard. Basically, an open world game is based on the content and everything that you have to do, but the story itself was kind of short. I really wish they would have added a little bit more story and taken a little bit away from the extras to add to the storyline, to give it a little more, you know, which could have been done. But they chose to go with content over the storyline, which it's a hard choice to make. And because of that, I'm gonna give it a 7 out of 10. It's average, it's decent. You can even finish it if you rush through it and don't level up. You can even rush through it in 6 to 8 hours. Just the storyline. You're not gonna be able to get everything there is to get, but you can rush through it and get it done in about 6 to 8 hours. And that brings us to the final rating. It comes out to 57 out of 70. Now what does that mean? That means that this game is an above average 8.1 out of 10. It's a great game overall. It'll keep you occupied. It'll keep you interested as long as you play the game like open worlds are meant to be played, where you're going around and doing as much as you can before you go through the storyline. There's tons of content here. There's tons of things to do. The graphics leave a little bit to be desired. There are some frame dips, but let me explain to you why frame dips happen in Mad Max. Something I noticed when you play for long periods of time, the dips tend to happen. in Mad Max. So if you keep it within, I'd say, 1 to 4 hours, you're not going to get those frame dips that are shown in Digital Foundry and all these different websites and everything else. The frame dips come when you play in excess of 4 hours or more. They start really being prominent. So it's a game you have to play in moderation, but if you keep your system cool, if you keep the game cool, if you keep everything good, if you have a fan in the back, you shouldn't have the frame dips that were shown in Digital Foundry, that were shown in a lot of different places. It's an above average game. It's definitely a game you want to pick up if you want a decent storyline. It's not the greatest storyline in the world, but it's definitely a storyline that's interesting enough to keep you occupied. So it's definitely a game you're going to want to pick up. It's definitely a game you're going to want to try out. It's not going to be for everybody. You have people who like open world and you have people who don't. You have people who like an excess of content, you have people who don't. Overall, that's 2 8s I've given since we started reviews again, and I will see all of you guys on the next Kickshawbrothers review.